Welcome back to Askewed Reviews, and we have another movie request today, and is for the 1998 film Saving Private Ryan. Here is your trivia question for today. Who cameos as the other Private Ryan in this film? The answer will be at the end of this video. Our film starts on June 6, 1944, as the U.S. Armed Forces are making their way onto Omaha Beach. After quite the battle, they are able to take the beach over. Now, back in the States, the U.S. Department of War discovers that there is a family that consists of four brothers and one mother, and three out of the four brothers have already died in combat. So they have decided that the fourth brother will be able to get to go home so that their mother is not left alone. So the squadron that is sent to go find Private Ryan is, of course, led by Captain Miller and is the same squadron we saw at the beginning of the film making their way up the beach. We watch as this group of soldiers makes their way through open country and even through enemy territory. They, of course, have to deal with combat and the death of some of their fellow soldiers. So, of course, the real question becomes, will these soldiers physically and mentally be able to make their way to Private Ryan and bring him back home? The film was directed by Steven Spielberg. Michael Bay was also a possibility as the director for the film. The movie was inspired by the true story of the Nealon brothers, and of course was based off of actual events like the storming of the beaches of Normandy. What's interesting, though, is both the final battle and where it was held, the town of Ramelle, were both fictional. The original script actually went through 10 revisions until we saw the version that we've seen today. Some of the things that were in there were very different. For instance, Captain Miller was originally a very one dimensional character and was supposed to survive. Upham was actually the one who was supposed to die at the end. Both Mellish and Caparzo were not originally in the script. Also, the character in the credits that is known as Steamboat Willie was not in the original script either. Also, when speaking about that character, there's apparently a big misconception that he's the one who kills Mellish. It's actually a different German officer that does it. However, the character Steamboat Willie is in the end battle sequence. The Omaha beach scene actually took $10 million and 4 weeks to shoot. They weren't actually able to film at the real Omaha beach, so instead they shot the scenes in South Ireland at Curracloe Beach. Two of the landing crafts that were used in this scene were actually in World War II. Of the 1,000 extras used during that scene, 20 to 30 of them were actually amputees. They were given prosthetic limbs so that they could lose them during the scene. Also, there was 40 barrels of fake blood that were used for the beach scene. The Department of Veterans Affairs was so worried about how some soldiers might react or be traumatized by the scenes in the film that they actually created a special 800 number for any of them to be able to call. Captain Dale Dye was the film's military advisor, and he's also the one that ran the boot camp for all of the principal actors in the film. Now, what's interesting about this is during that training, Matt Damon was the only actor who didn't have to go through it. Spielberg specifically did that, so hopefully the other actors would harbor resentment towards him, and that would hopefully show up in their performances with him. Tom Hanks was apparently the only actor who didn't complain about the training, as he'd actually been through similar training when he was doing the scenes for the Vietnam flashbacks in Forrest Gump. Also, in 2006, Tom Hanks was inducted into the U.S. Army's Ranger Hall of Fame as an honorary member due to his portrayal in this film. Also, speaking of accolades, there are apparently a lot of people that consider it quite the controversy that Saving Private Ryan did not win Best Picture award for the Oscars and was beat out by Shakespeare in Love. Steven Spielberg originally cast Matt Damon as Private Ryan as he wanted an unknown actor to play the role. He, of course, had no idea that Matt Damon would win the Oscar for Good Will Hunting before Saving Private Ryan would release. Other actors that were up for the role of Private Ryan were Edward Norton, Neil Patrick Harris, and Ethan Hawke. Matt Damon, by the way, ad-libbed the entire story about his brother in the barn. Harrison Young was specifically chosen to play the older Private Ryan due to his resemblance to Matt Damon. Tom Hanks, of course, does an amazing job as Captain Miller in the film, but he wasn't the only actor up for the role. Apparently, Mel Gibson and Harrison Ford were also possibilities. Tom Sizemore, who plays Sergeant Hovarth, was apparently battling a drug addiction during production. Spielberg actually decided to blood test him each and every day and would threaten to fire and replace him along with reshooting all of his scenes if it ever came up positive. And Spielberg definitely had some good backups, as some of the other actors who tried out for the role were Billy Bob Thornton, Michael Madsen, and Thomas Hayden Church. Barry Pepper plays the character of Jackson, but that role almost went to Garth Brooks. Upham, who is played by Jeremy Davies, was almost played by Clifton Collins Jr. Apparently, the role of Caparzo was actually written with Vin Diesel in mind, after Spielberg watched him in the movie Strays. Giovanni Ribisi plays the character of Wade, but it was almost given to Joshua Jackson. George Stadler plays Steamboat Willie, but the role almost went to Till Schweiger. There are also some really good cameo appearances in this film, including Bryan Cranston, Ted Danson, Paul Giamatti, and Dennis Farina. Christopher Eccleston apparently turned down a role in this film as well, but that role is undisclosed. Here's two more pieces of information related to the film about video games. Apparently, when Hank's character of Miller takes out his gun and is firing at the tank, the video game series Call of Duty was inspired by that, and that's why you have players who, when they fall, pull out their weapon and can still fire on opponents until they die. The video game Medal of Honor is actually here due to Spielberg wanting to consult and produce on a video game. The opening mission actually takes place on Omaha Beach, and some of the dialogue used in the movie is even used in the game. It even follows some of the movie's plot. So, when it comes to the film Saving Private Ryan, I absolutely love this movie. In my opinion, it's in my top 5 favorite war movies of all time. So, I'm absolutely going to give this one a 5 out of 5. Now, as for a recommendation, if you did like this movie, I absolutely recommend watching HBO's Band of Brothers. This is also, in my opinion, one of my top 5 favorite miniseries ever made. Now, as for the trivia question from the beginning of this episode, who cameos as the other Private Ryan in this film? Nathan Fillion plays the other Private Ryan in the film. The group runs into and mistakenly identifies another Private Ryan and tells him the story of his brother's passing. This ends up being a slightly darkly comedic scene. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Askewed Reviews, and if there is a movie you'd like to see get a review, just mention it in the comments.